I really wish I wasn't standing here. I wish I wasn't. Rather, maybe I'd rather be here on a work trip up to Northern California and take a little divergent trip over here to Merced and look at the campus, because I've never been here before, and see the campus that Michaela talks about all the time and how much she loves it here at UC Merced. And maybe to meet some of her great friends that she talks so glowingly about. That's what I'd rather be doing. Or maybe it's May 2017 and not February 2016. And I'm here at graduation with my wife Mary, her aunt. Being here with John and Michaela's mom Teresa and her family, watching her graduate from UC Merced. So proud of the young woman that she's become. I wish that's why I was here. But I'm not. I'm here to tell you a little bit of a story. I'm here to talk to you about overcoming challenges in your life. About opening up your heart to God. About the person that defined who I am. And about how doing good saved my life. John Kennedy once said, a long time ago, none of you were alive when John Kennedy was president, but I was, although I barely remember. But John Kennedy once said, "It is better to light one candle than to curse the darkness." This is a story about lighting that one candle and finding the spark that lights that candle and keeps it lit. This is a picture of my son Nick. This is at Warped Tour. Maybe some of you have been to Warped Tour. I know we went to Warped Tour with Uncle Dennis. And if you went to Warped Tour in Ventura, you might have seen Nick crowd surfing right up in the front to some of his favorite bands like Yellow Card, The Story So Far, Shiny Toy Guns, name another one quickly. Set Your Goals, thank you. Newfound Glory. And any other number of bands that your parents had probably never heard of. That was Nick there. And to tell you about this picture, I need to tell you a little story. Late one night, my wife Mary and I found this picture on Nick's computer. And when we saw it, we laughed. We laughed really hard. But we live in a high-rise loft in downtown LA, and we have a dog. And Coco looked up at me and said, "We gotta go downstairs. It's late at night. We better go downstairs." So Coco and I went downstairs to do her late night thing. And as we were downstairs, like many of you that have dogs, I talked to my dog. Some of you must, others of you must be talking to your dogs once in a while, right? So I talked to my dog. We were downstairs on the sidewalk. And I said, "Coco, I just realized something. I haven't cried today. I knew this day would come, girl, but I didn't know when it would be. But it's 10 o'clock at night, and I just realized I haven't cried. We better get done with your business and go back upstairs and tell Mom. This is pretty exciting. Let's go tell Mom." So Coco and I finished our business. We went up the elevator, and I burst in the door to tell Mary that I hadn't cried today. And there she was, sitting in front of Nick's computer, sobbing. So much for not crying that day. So why did I cry every day? Well, to tell you why, I need to go backwards about 6 weeks from that day. It was a sunny Southern California summer day, July 27, 2014. My son Nick talked a couple of his friends into going with him down to the beach, joining him down at the beach in Venice. For a day of hanging out, getting together, talking about some things, looking at girls, who knows. But to share some time with his friends before everyone went back off to college. Nick was about 3 weeks away from starting at USC, which was his dream school. He was going to be a transfer student from Santa Barbara City College, and he couldn't wait for that day. So after hanging out at the beach for a little while, he told his friends he was going to go and jump in the ocean and rinse the sand off. So Nick went down to the water, and right about that same time, a dark cloud appeared seemingly out of nowhere. There was no forewarning. And that dark cloud threw a bolt of lightning. It caught everybody. Swimmers in the water and lifeguards in the tower, completely by surprise. Lifeguards rushed into the ocean, pulled people out, injured people out. And Nick's friends ran down to the water's edge, and they watched as the lifeguards tended to a man about my age that was severely injured. And it was then that they realized they couldn't find Nick. So one of them, Alex, ran up to the showers, thinking maybe Nick went into the showers and didn't go into the ocean. And when he couldn't find him, ran back down. And he and Brett ran to the lifeguards and said, "We can't find our friend." The lifeguards thought they'd pulled everybody out of the ocean. But they were wrong. They jumped back in, all the lifeguards jumped back in and went looking for Nick. And they found him about 30 minutes later. The lifeguards did everything they could, but it was too late. Nick had already gone to heaven. But this isn't a story about losing one's child. But I can guarantee you, every single one of your parents would agree that it's the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And it is. There is nothing worse. Our family was blessed to be a part of a number of very strong communities. The community that Nick grew up in, the St. Brendan Church community, the St. Brendan School community, Notre Dame High School, where he went to high school and played baseball. All those communities, along with USC, wrapped their collective arms around us right afterwards. And a memorial scholarship was immediately set up at USC. Money began pouring in. And I'm proud to say that the Nick Fagnano Memorial Scholarship at the Price School for Public Policy at USC has already become an endowment, meaning that it's already awarded some money to a deserving student. And that endowment will be awarding scholarships to students long after Mary and I are gone. And Nick's memory will always live on the courtyard at Lewis Hall at USC. And that, and so many other things, makes us feel good. Mary and I were parishioners at St. Brendan Church long before Nick went to school at St. Brendan's. In fact, the three of us went to 8 a.m. Mass the morning that the lightning struck. Mary joined the parish to give Nick a leg up so that he could get into school at kindergarten when he became of age. And so she would drag me to church each week and we would go. Because growing up, I have to tell you, I was not the best Catholic you'd ever meet. My parents would drop us kids off in front of Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Hermosa Beach. And instead of making a left, oftentimes I would make a right. And I'd go check out the waves, because I grew up as a surfer. And so, mysteriously, I just knew at the end of Mass that surf was pretty good, and maybe I would want to go surfing after Mass. Well, one time, Nick was home from Santa Barbara, and the three of us went to church. And when Mass started, Nick realized that there were no altar servers. So he quickly went into the back, into the sacristy, put the garments on, albeit they might have been a little bit short, but he put those garments on, and he appeared next to Monsignor Fleming. And Monsignor Fleming's double take was priceless. So after communion, I had to run out the back and make sure I got a picture of Nick and Monsignor Fleming together. And this is a recording of Nick, tallest altar server in St. Brendan history. I love that picture. And it sits beside Monsignor's bed, he said, at the rectory. Now, when Nick was 13, he saw something on TV about how kids in the Dominican Republic were as crazy about baseball as he was. The only difference was every year Nick got new uniforms, new equipment, new gloves, new balls, new cleats, new everything. And the kids of the Dominican Republic got nothing. So Nick organized a uniform drive through his Little League. That's him, the tall kid. Nick organized this uniform drive, and we collected way more stuff than we ever expected. And we wound up sending about 300 pounds of uniforms and equipment down to the Dominican Republic. And so we had a connection with the Dominican early on. About a couple months after we lost Nick, my wife Mary was having a particularly hard day. And she was praying to feel Nick's spirit, because she was just having a tough day that parents have. And then the phone rang. It was a work colleague of Mary's, calling to tell her about a trip. This guy had started a charity that helped vulnerable children around the world. And he told her about this trip to the Dominican Republic. And he knew that there was a connection between Nick and the Dominican from years prior. Because Mary told him someday she would love to take a trip with him, with Nick, down to the Dominican Republic and see the country where he sent those uniforms when he was an early teenager. For some reason, I was not part of this trip. I don't know why. She thought maybe because it's hot and sweaty and I wouldn't want to go. But I was a little bit annoyed when I found out that I was not part of this trip. Well, this gentleman told Mary about the trip. He said they were setting up a computer lab in a school in Santo Domingo. And maybe she and I would want to go, because they needed 10 people to take 30 laptops, because each of us would have to carry 3 laptops each in our carry-on luggage, because if you ship them to the Dominican, most likely they get stolen out of customs and they never make it. But if you carry them in, no problem. So Mary gave the usual answers that people give when they're given this kind of an offer. She said, "It's too early. I don't think we can do this. We have so much on our plates. It's just not the right time." She hung up the phone and she walked over to me, because we both worked from home at the time. And she said, "I can't believe what I just turned down." So we talked about it for about 2 minutes. And we immediately found ourselves online looking for tickets to the Dominican Republic. And so we decided then and there, this was the time to go, and this was the right thing to do. And off we would go with 8 other people from around this country, looking to do good and looking to make a difference. So we went. And as I said, we were part of a very strong community at St. Brendan's School. And all these communities wrapped their arms around us. And the kids at St. Brendan's, when they heard about our trip, they wanted to do something. So at St. Brendan's in the fall, they have something called Crazy Day. Now, I don't know, I'm assuming some of you went to Catholic school growing up. And I don't know if you had Crazy Day at your school, but Crazy Day at St. Brendan really wasn't that crazy. All it meant was for $1, you could bring $1, and you could wear a crazy hat, a funny hat. See, you're nodding like you've done that. Yeah. Or maybe some goofy socks. You know, it's pretty crazy for Catholic school, right there. So for $1, you could do that. And they also had pizza slices for sale for $1, brownies for sale. And each year that they did that, the kids would designate a charity, and the money that was raised would go to that charity. So the kids decided that year it was going to be in honor of Nick, and they were going to give us the money. And the teachers were all excited because the kids came up with this idea. The student council did. This is kindergarten through 8th grade. And so the teacher said, most likely, you're probably going to get double what we normally take in. You'll probably get about $600. Well, the next day, teachers brought to us a manila envelope. And in that envelope was $2,658.16. A little bit more than $600. And we were so grateful. So off we went to the Dominican Republic a couple of months later, with a big wad of cash in our pockets and a job to do. And when we got to the Dominican Republic, and we saw the need at the school, we knew we could make a difference. And when we saw these children and these beautiful faces, we knew we had something to do. Tia Tatiana School is in Herrera, which is the worst slum of Santo Domingo. It's where the poorest of the poor live. And Tia Tatiana is a beacon of light in a very, very tough area. So we had that job to do. We wanted to make a difference. And these kids helped us do that. And it was awesome. It was awesome being there. So what we did when we got there, well, let me just tell you a little bit more about this. The average income in Herrera per household per month is about $200. Now it costs about $5 or $6 to go to school. It's a lot of money for a parent to put out when they're only making $200 a month. And Tia Tatiana teaches more than 300 children. And they not just provide an education. It's a strong, Christ-based, morally based education to help these kids stay in school. The average age in the Dominican Republic for girls to drop out is 14. And the average age for boys is 11. Now, Tia Tatiana beats that average in the Dominican by a lot. Of about the 35 kids that started kindergarten, this year they'll graduate over 20 from high school, with many of these kids going on to university. So they have a wonderful track record. But putting together a computer lab proved to be a lot easier than we thought. It actually, well, this is a couple of pictures of Herrera, of the area where we were. As you can see, this is actually from the roof of the school, and you can see what this part of Santo Domingo looks like. There is a strong middle class in Santo Domingo, but this isn't where it is, believe me. But as we put together the computer lab, we found out it wasn't so hard. Even a guy like me could do it. I had to plug in a computer, turn on, hit a couple of prompts, and all of a sudden, everything's popping up in Spanish, and we're all good. So it took us about 2 hours to do the whole job. And we were there for 5 days. So we're like, uh-oh, what's next? We got this thing done awfully fast. So we thought about it, and we prayed about it over the next couple of days. And this is what the computer lab looks like after we were finished. It's a great little classroom. But the needs in the rest of the school were so great. So like I said, we thought and we prayed about it. And in the meantime, we went off to an orphanage called Ramar, which is just on the outskirts of Santo Domingo. Ramar holds about, there's probably 40 some odd kids there right now, ages 2 to 18. 17 of these children are HIV positive. And these kids who have so little, most of whom were basically picked up off the streets. These kids have so little, but they're grateful for what they have. A roof over their heads, friends to play with, school, church. They are so grateful for everything they have. And when we went there, we had a great time with these kids. The main sport when you go visit them is for them to ask you for your phone. They all want your phones because they want to run around and take pictures of each other. For some reason, they love to take pictures of the bathrooms and their bedrooms, which look really bad. But they also take pictures of each other, and they take pictures of us. And this is where these pictures came from. You throw away about 3/4 of the pictures they take, but 1/4 of them are absolutely priceless. And you know they can't run off with the phone, so you're perfectly fine giving them to them. But they look for games on your phones, too. They're very disappointed. I didn't really make games on my phone. But it is the #1 sport. And we also have a barbecue for them while we're there. And for them, that day is like Thanksgiving. I've never seen a 10-year-old pile a plate of food so high. Because basically their meals each day consist of rice, beans, and maybe a little bit of protein. So when we come in with pork chops and sausages and chicken and all of this food, and we're grilling and grilling and grilling, it's a huge day when we get there. And they love having us there. And we've gone back now a few times. And our last trip in November was our most successful yet. We installed 3 working bathrooms in each of the 3 buildings that make up the Ramar Orphanage. Their bathrooms didn't work. And now they have toilets that flush, 1 in each building, and it's a big deal. It's a big deal not having to take buckets up with you. And they're so happy. And we're working on my pet project. They're about halfway through my pet project, which was restoring a field, creating a field for these kids. This is what the field looked like. It was rocks, it was dirt, it was tree stumps, it was broken glass, and they played on this stuff barefoot. They played soccer, they played baseball, and I took baseball equipment down there for them. And so my pet project was to build them a field. And when we were there last time, they were about halfway done. And when I get there the next time, I'll see it because it's finished. Now, it may not be the beautiful facilities that you have here at UC Merced, but to these kids, their new field is like Levi Stadium. It's just awesome. Right now, they play soccer. I got visions to do a whole baseball field, and maybe that back wall there is going to get repainted. It's going to be called Nick's Field. And that's what we hope to do. But back to Tia Tatiana. After those couple of days, we had an idea. We decided, after looking at all those classrooms, how depressing each classroom was. And so we decided we'd do an extreme makeover of one of the classrooms. Because we had that big wad of cash sitting here in our pockets, and we had to do something with it. We couldn't just go back and say, well, we didn't do really anything with the money that you gave us, but thanks so much for giving us the money. So we came up with this idea. We're going to do an extreme classroom makeover. So we walked all through the school again. We decided the 6th grade classroom was the most depressing. And so we broke into, we put our heads together, the 10 of us, and we had a game plan that afternoon. And we broke into two groups. And this is what a classroom, this is not darkening anything. This is what a classroom looks like at Tia Tatiana. This is the little guys. We broke into 2 groups. One group was in charge of going out and getting learning aids, books, and things for the walls, and new curtains to kind of make it a little bit better environment, a better learning environment, and games and puzzles and all those things. My group, we were in charge of finding furniture. We had the tougher job. So we're looking all around Santo Domingo. We couldn't find any desks. But then I had noticed at some point on our trip, believe it or not, they have an IKEA in Santo Domingo. Like I said, there is a middle class there. So we went to IKEA and we bought tables to use as desks. And we found an educational supply store and we bought every single chair that we could in that educational supply store. Our fellow Dominicans, our friends that we work with there, they were incredulous about how much money we were spending. They were like, well, if you wait 3 weeks, we can get a chair for $10 less. We go, no. It's going to get done today. We don't care what the cost is. We're getting it done. We're making over this classroom. So we all gathered back at the end of the day. And we got to work putting together this classroom. And it was awesome when it was done. Because this is what it looked like when we were done. So we went home. We actually had about the best rotisserie chicken you'll ever eat anywhere at Provolone. But that's a whole other story. If any of you ever go to Santo Domingo, come and ask me about the best chicken in Santo Domingo and I'll tell you where to go. But we went back the next morning, early the next morning, and while the assembly was going on at school, we went back into the classroom and we waited for the kids and the teacher to come in. And this was their reaction when they saw their new classroom. The kids were so happy, and the teacher, she cried. And then we had to race to go to the airport so we could fly back to the United States. But we told the teachers and the kids and the principal that we'd be back. And that was met with a certain amount of very much warranted skepticism. Because they'd seen Americans come in and do a nice little thing and say they'd be back, never hear from them again. But we went back. And we've redone every single classroom at this school. All 10 classrooms now look like this. All 10 classrooms have new desks and new chairs and learning aids. We gave each teacher $300 to go to an educational supply store. And to them, that was like Disneyland. One of their happiest days ever. And the kids, and the parents, and the teachers, and the principal, they all thank us when we go. But it's us who really should thank them. Because they're the ones that once again helped us keep that candle lit. And to give glory to God and praise His name and honor our son. A few weeks after we lost Nick, we didn't know how we'd get up in the morning. And we found that reason here in the Dominican Republic. And we go back in April for our 6th trip since November of 2014. And we have very ambitious plans for Tia Tatiana School. And we're really excited about what the possibilities are at Tia Tatiana, at the Ramar Orphanage. And we work with this group called Vision Trust. They're a Christian-based organization out of Colorado Springs. They have 12 projects in the Dominican Republic. And they're in 17 countries around the world. And the work that they're doing for children is phenomenal. They help over, I think it's 17,000 or 170,000 children around the world. And we're so grateful to be a partner with them. And it's just a wonderful thing. We love going to the Dominican. Even though I do sweat like nobody's business. We still love it. Having to do all this work, 95 degrees, 95% humidity all the time, it's a little bit brutal. But Nick and I had a special relationship. Oh, one more. Let's go on to that next one. There's Nick. Nick and I had a special relationship from the day he was born. We loved the same things. Baseball, golf, watching sports, food. I like to cook. He liked to eat. That worked out really well. But what dad wouldn't want to see a tweet like this from his son? And that was sent to me a few months after we lost Nick, one of his friends. He blocked me on Twitter, so I could. This is the way it's supposed to work. I'm sure all of you have blocked your parents too. That's the way it's supposed to work. But being the dad, I was supposed to be the one to teach him. And I did. I taught him about all the important things. How to throw a curveball. Good etiquette on a golf course. How to steal the last French fry without anybody noticing. You know, all those really important things. But it was really Nick that taught me so much. The roles were really reversed. It was Nick who taught me how to be a Catholic. It was Nick who taught me about the power of prayer. It was Nick who taught me how important it is to go to church. All these things Nick taught me. Unfortunately, I learned all these things after we lost him. Maybe it was because I was too busy with work. Maybe it was because there was too much outside noise. Maybe it was because Nick was just smarter than me. Nick certainly was a lot more spiritual than me. And Nick had a much closer relationship to God than I did. About a month after we lost Nick, Mary found a letter in the bottom of his backpack. The letter was from Nick to Nick. And he kept it there. He'd had it in there for a few months. Now, perhaps some of you, when you were in high school, went to Kairos. You said yes about, Crazy Day. Maybe you went to Kairos, but maybe not. Kairos is a retreat that kids at Nick's Catholic school went on when they were juniors in high school. And during that time, they have the kids write a letter to themselves. And about 2 years later, they send it to the person that wrote the letter. You know about that, right? See, now you know about it. So Nick had received that letter a few months prior and had it in his backpack the whole time. We never knew it existed. And I have to read this part. But in that letter that Nick wrote to Nick, he wrote, at the end, he wrote, "I will continue to work as hard as I can to be the best I can be, but I can only do that with God's help. Now, the most important thing is my relationship with God. I feel that I am in a good place with God, but it could always be better. I never want to miss Mass again because church just makes my week much better. Well, I hope by the time this reaches me, I have fulfilled all these goals and have gotten better at what I need to be better at. Life is great, and I hope I continue to grow to make life that much better." Well, that letter reached you, Nick, and it reached me. And it's me that learned, again, so much from you. You did teach me how to be a better Catholic. You did teach me how important it is to go to Mass. You did teach me that you can always have a better relationship with God than the relationship that you have. So I learned so much from Nick. And I was listening. And I continue to listen. And I listen each day. So now, I look for things that Nick is trying to tell me. And I listen to the homilies all the more carefully when I'm at Mass for things that Nick is trying to express to me. Now, sometimes that could get me in a little bit of trouble. Nick is interred in the mausoleum below the church at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Angels in downtown Los Angeles. And so Mary and I go there each week to change the flowers, and we go to Mass there a lot. And when we go to Mass, we sit up to the right side of the altar, right above Nick, and right next to the beautiful choir. And so one Mass, we were right in the front row, just right up on the right side of the altar. And Monsignor Kevin Kostelnik, he's the Monsignor at the Cathedral, he was delivering another one of his just inspiring and just amazing homilies. And it was getting towards the end, and it was so amazing, I thought, I gotta write some of this down. So I whipped out my phone, and we're in the front row, mind you. I whipped out my phone, and I started typing away on my phone. Well, it's towards the end of the homily. So now everyone stands up for the profession of faith. And I'm still sitting there typing away. And my wife Mary was horrified. She thought one of two things. I was either texting somebody, or I was looking at scores. She goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, no. I'm typing. What Monsignor just said. She gave me a little break on that. But this is what Monsignor said. No matter what you are facing, adversity, anxiety, stress, no matter what, if you utter these words, everything will be okay. I believe. I believe. And I do. I believe that someday Nick and I will be together again. And Nick will tell me how proud he is of me and of Mary for all the things we've done and all the joy that we've brought others since Nick went to be with his Heavenly Father. And we'll laugh. We'll laugh sometimes because he'll tell me about some of the signs he sent me that I completely missed. We'll laugh about that. But I think he'll agree that I opened my heart up enough to get most of the signs that Nick sent me. And we look for those signs every day. And to my wife, Mary, it comes in the forms of rainbows. She looks for those rainbows every day as a sign that Nick is reaching out to her. Rainbows in the sky, rainbows in windows, reflections, soap bubbles, flowers on the floor. She sees rainbows that I can never see, but she sees rainbows in everything, and that brings joy to her, that Nick is always with her. So we know that Nick is with us every single day. And I have a couple of quick stories before I end. I know Nick's always with me. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was having a particularly bad day. I was having a day where I was running around that morning, trying to do all this stuff, feeling like I was just spinning my wheels, having to do this and do that, run from one place to another. We all have those kinds of days. Just a crappy morning. And I was having that kind of a morning. And the more it kind of raveled out of control, the angrier I got. And then I realized why I was so angry. I was angry because I shouldn't have to be doing everything I was doing that morning. I shouldn't have to be filling out donor spreadsheets and going and getting envelopes and mailings and doing all the things that we have to do with our foundation. And I realized I was so angry because Nick should be here. Nick should be getting ready to graduate from USC. If that lightning hadn't struck, I wouldn't be doing anything that I was doing that morning, and I was pissed. So one of my trips was to run to Staples and go get some special envelopes that Mary wanted. And as I got out of my car, I was really in a bad mood. Walking towards the front door, and there's an elderly woman walking up the ramp. And she's got those crutches, you know, with the rings around them, and she's walking at about a half a mile an hour. And she said, "Hello." And even though I was pissed, I managed that smile, and I said, "Good morning. How are you today?" And as I hurriedly walked by and she went behind me, I heard her say this. She said, "God has blessed me." And that stopped me in my tracks. She was right. God had blessed her. God had blessed her with another day. And God had blessed me with another day. A day to bring joy to others. Another day to honor Nick. Another day to give glory to God. And another day to do good in Nick's name. That was a sign I didn't miss, Nick. I did not miss that one. So you're not going to get me on that. And one other story. I told you we were going off to the Dominican Republic about 4 months after we lost Nick. It was a very emotional trip. And we went with a friend of ours, Jennifer. And then we were meeting 7 other people that we didn't know. So we flew into the Dominican Republic, and it was pretty raw. And the 3 of us are into customs, and before we went through the process of getting into the country, Mary and Jennifer went off to the ladies' room. And I stood outside and watched the luggage. And as I was standing there, this young family, a mom, a little boy, a little girl, they came walking up. And the boy pulled on the family restroom door. And he turned around and he said, "Mom, the restroom door is locked." And she said, "Well, that's okay. You can go into the ladies' room with me." Now that little boy wanted nothing to do with that idea. He was about yay tall. He's like, "No way." So I turned to her and I said, "My wife and friend, they're in there. When they come out, I'd be more than happy to take them into the men's room with me." And she said, "Thank you." We chatted for a minute. Mary and Jennifer came out. So this little guy and I started towards the men's room. And as we were walking, I said, "Hey, so what's your name?" And he casually looked over his shoulder and he said, "Nicholas." Of course. Nick was with us. Nick has been with us every step of the way. my talk when I told you about Mary sobbing? When I came back upstairs to tell her I hadn't cried that day? Maybe you were wondering why. After Coco and I went downstairs, she kept looking on Nick's computer, and she found an essay that he wrote for a college freshman English class. And the name of that essay was called The Reality of Heaven. And in this essay, Nick writes about different religions' views of heaven versus his own beliefs. It was a really well-written essay. I didn't know he could write that way. But in the conclusion, Nick wrote, "When I go to heaven, I expect to feel joy, gratitude, and excitement, as we will finally be reunited with the loved ones we've lost on earth. Perhaps rest in peace isn't the best term in relation to death. Rather, a phrase such as thrive in joy best represents how I will want to spend eternity." You know, I recently came upon Pope Francis's Lenten message. And in this message, he quotes an early Christian mystic, John Chrysostom. Did I pronounce that right? I did. Okay. John Chrysostom. And in this quote, the Pope says, "No act of virtue can be great if it is not followed by advantage for others. So, no matter how much time you spend fasting, no matter how much you sleep on a hard floor and eat ashes and sigh continually, if you do no good to others, you do nothing great." So my prayer is that we continue to thrive in joy here on earth and in heaven. So let's go out there, do some good, and spread that joy. Thank you all so much for listening to me tonight. I really appreciate you being here. For allowing me to tell my story. I am very, very grateful to all of you. And I wish you all much peace. And I wish you all good grades. But thank you again. I really, really appreciate it. We do have the Thrive and Joy Nick Fagnano Foundation, and I meant to bring my cards. And I can't believe, Michaela, I completely spaced out. We raced over here. I have Frisbees. I have water bottles. They Thrive and Joy, Nick Fagnano Foundation. And you know where they all are? In the back of my car.